exhibition of the new in person with all of you. I'm Leah Newman. I'm the director and curator of the galleries here. Each year, the galleries present an exhibition that highlights one of our own, a faculty member in our department. And tonight, we're really excited to introduce Katie St. Clair and this new work, tons of new, beautiful works here. Exhibitions like this are really important and great for us because they allow us to highlight one of our own as both an educator and an artist. It's not just here in the community, but out in the global art world. I want to recognize the Herb Jackson and Laura Grosch Gallery Endowment, Davidson College Friends of the Arts, the Art Department, of course, for their support, and then also Marissa Pascucci, our Gallery Collection Coordinator, David Sackett, our Department Technician somewhere. All of our gallery interns, many of them are here, and they help us put these exhibitions together. And then Court Savage, the chair of the Art Department. Thank you for your support. Before I introduce Katie, I really want to quickly just mention also that a few days ago we welcomed Lorena Mall here. She's an artist that will be visiting with us for the next 2.5 weeks or so from Mexico City. And she's creating an exhibition. There she is. Wave your hand. She is creating an exhibition across the hall. She has just gotten started, but I hope that you will visit the gallery and then come back in a few weeks for the closing of Katie's exhibition and the opening of Lorena's exhibition. September 29th. So, Katie St. Clair earned her BFA from the Art Academy of Cincinnati and a Master's of Fine Arts from the University of Michigan, the Stamp School of Art and Design. After graduating, she was a teaching fellow at the Byrne College of Art in Ireland and also a visiting assistant professor at Albion in Michigan before she came to Davidson. Katie's work has been exhibited around the country at many venues, including the Museum of Contemporary Art in Detroit, more locally at the Green Hill Center for Art for North Carolina artists in Greensboro, North Carolina, and also at the Mint Museum's Point to the South exhibition, where she was the recipient of the Young Affiliates of the Mint Choice Award. And the list goes on and on, but I will turn it over to you.
I could not have done this without the support from the department, the support from the gallery. The community here at Davidson is absolutely amazing, and not a day goes by that I'm not grateful to be with all the people who surround me so consistently. I could go on all night with names, so I won't. I'll try to keep it brief. But Leah already recognized so beautifully the department. I also want to give a shout out to my students. I think that it's really important. I learn a lot from them, and probably as much as they do for me. I have a lot of studio assistants that I get to work with, as well as all of my painting students who I get to watch grow. And they really inspire me to look at things freshly, and also to question everything all the time. And I think that that is embedded in this work, and it really, it feels like a very special thing. I would also like to thank my family for driving so far to be here tonight. They were on the road for 8 hours with a 2-year-old, so it's pretty special. Yeah, and I think my sister probably ran out of the room with the 2-year-old. But yeah, my family has really been hugely supportive of me over the years and has helped me to really find my voice and stand my ground as an artist and an educator. And that happened here. As well as all of my friends. I could go on and on. But I won't. I wanted to tell you a bit about the work. What you see in this gallery space has been made. None of it has been shown before. Most of it was made over my sabbatical. I went for a year to travel around, make art, learn what I could about contemporary landscape. And a lot changed in my life over that year. I think everyone should have a sabbatical. I think it should be a part of everyone's life because I think it really made me think so differently about the things that I didn't have time to pay attention to. And I think we so rarely get to settle down and actually check in with ourselves in a way that is profound, and I have the time to do that. So there are 4 bodies of work in this show. One of the bodies of work is depicted right here, and I'll start with that. This is a series I've been doing called Wayside since I was in graduate school, actually, and it's changed quite a bit over my time of making it. But what you're seeing is the active process of painting. The material that has been collected and suspended in ice is trash that was gathered on the beaches and coastlines of Ireland. And for all of you out there who are concerned about the environment, it was all bleached and boiled and wrapped and brought back very safely. Although I don't know how it didn't get taken away by customs. But it didn't, so it is here. All the natural material is collected from the area and from Davidson's campus. And they're suspended in ice with pigment. And over the next 36 to 48 hours, or 24 to 36 hours, they will melt and create a painting. It is a really dynamic process that I think challenges a lot of things that we think about art, like having a final product. I think it's much more important that we get to watch these melt than it is that there's anything at the end. Even though there is something at the end, we have a painting that can be hung on the wall, as well as the spheres actually will drop and create sculptures. And so they are held together by the drying process. And they're amazingly stable, even though there's no binder. It also really challenges the way we protect art, because there is debris in the gallery and water, which could affect paintings. And they've been frozen, but there could be some bugs that have found their way in. I know. I did freeze everything I could, but a lot of the dyes you see and that are used, they're synthetic and natural dyes, but there's actually, I think, the little bug is, if you're seeing pink, bright pink, that's actually from a bug, dried and appropriate ways, that dyes pink. So that's a very fun process, and hopefully you'll all enjoy the melting of that. That's something that I do for people who visit. It's not something I do for myself. It's a lot of work and energy, but it is always so exciting to watch people watching it, or get scared. I've seen a few people jump already, and that always, I don't know why, having something drop in the gallery and someone goes, like, what? Like, I didn't do it. It's a really fun experience and kind of challenges how we normally act in a gallery space. I have tried a new version of this, so the long column that I'm calling a nod to totem from some of my travels is also made of ice and will be melting and hopefully dropping. So my goal was to actually have a pretty dramatic drop. So there's nothing supporting the top layers. And so hopefully that will be moving down slowly, melting. And I hope you all come back and check out the results in the next couple of days. Another body of work I wanted to talk about is actually based off of a story and an experience from traveling that was pretty important. I had this idea when I went on sabbatical that I really wanted to travel like I make art. I was like, how would I do that? know exactly what you were after? What if you had a sense of the things you wanted, but you didn't know quite what ending was going to give you? And I thought, I think I'd really like that. So how would I do that? And so I started kind of picking out the things. I was like, I want to be in a northern environment for sure. I also want to be near the ocean and near the woods. That's important. I want to be off-grid. I want to be unplugged from a lot of the kind of noise and patterns I had gotten very used to, and see what it's like if my work became manual instead of mental. And so I wanted that, and I wanted to live in a place that felt like the landscape. And so I used Airbnb, and if you put down the bracket of price way down low, and you say you want no amenities whatsoever, and you can actually, I was able to transcribe those ideas into that function and drag around the United States and Canada. It took me about 2 hours of dragging, looking at places for $20, $30 a night, and seeing what they had to offer. And I found the cabin I stayed at on Hideaway, and I was thrilled. In fact, I was like, that's it, done. I'm done, I'm going there. I knew nothing about the island. I didn't know how to get there. I didn't know there was 8 hours from the shoreline by ferry. I didn't know I'd be able to see Alaska from the beach that the house sat on. I didn't realize the storms would be so intense, or that the light would be so little. I also did not know I would have roommates that were rats. That was a big surprise. But I did know that it was going to be completely off-grid. I knew that I was going to be chopping wood and doing a lot of different tasks that I was really excited about. And I wouldn't have reception. And so many people were like, aren't you going to post? And I was like, that'd be hard. No, I can't. And I was really excited about that. And so I went, and I made art the whole time I was there. But funny enough, I don't think I was ready to make art yet. And it made me question how taking a break from making art might be a pretty profound thing. So I had this crazy experience where I met a woman who was a healing woman. She was a native Cree woman, and we got into a conversation. She was a friend of a friend who I met on the beach, and she asked me if she could tell me something after we spent the day together. And I said, yeah. I was getting ready to go and walk home a mile in the dark, and she said, your house is surrounded by darkness. It's watching you. And my friend was like, why would you tell her that? And I was like, interesting, and tried to forget it, honestly. And so I walked back in the dark, and I mean, I'm talking dark where your flashlight never hits the ground. Like pitch blackness on a dark night, really thick. I've never experienced anything like it. And so I went home, and I spent a lot of time trying to ignore the feelings I was having of fear. I was like, I'm alone, I can't think about this. And I was like, well, maybe this is actually exactly what I should be thinking about. And I had the time to think about it. And so in the last few days of the trip, the Penumbra Paintings they came into life. There was a storm. I collected seaweed off the beach and piled it onto color studies I had made of the sunsets and the light. And I ground up charcoal from my fire, and I made a slurry and poured it over the seaweed onto these little surfaces, and then waited very patiently, but not quite patiently enough for them to dry because it was so wet in my driftwood house that I actually had to take them to the fire and try not to burn the paper to dry up the paintings. And then when I removed the seaweed, what was forming was something that looked very scary and ominous and frankly like what I was kind of imagining. And it gave me great relief and a lot of joy actually from that experience. And so I dug into the idea of darkness and I started looking at cultural darkness and darkness in Hawaii and why it's hard to name and why we want to suppress it and how that's a cultural choice, not necessarily a choice everyone makes. And so I really started thinking about how the darkness makes the light a lot brighter and how when we unpack the darkness we're seeing and feeling, we actually feel a lot of lightness in that process instead of hiding from it. So that felt very special. And then I ended up in Ireland on the coastline at the Burn College of Art again, where I taught earlier, and I was there for 3 months in total, almost 3 months, and I spent a lot of time on the beaches, walking and thinking about water and how it covers so much and hides so much, but then we also see through, we see reflections, and that's actually when this series of work came into being, which is called Untitled Lines. I really wanted to express the kind of ever-changing coastline and thinking about actually this wonderful experience. My partner is fly fisher, and he would go fly fishing, and I would just put on the big waders, and I would go off and wade around in the water. And I spent my time just taking videos of a lot of water, what was happening underneath on these streams and rivers and in the ocean as well, and spent a lot of time learning about the seaweed that I was finding. And it occurred to me that it could be a really amazing thing to find that in a painting. And then lo and behold, I went home to my studio space here in Davidson, and I realized I had, because the paintings I had made before I left over the summer, before I had gone on my trip, looked exactly like the videos I was taking while I was in Ireland. And it occurred to me that the thing that I had been looking for and trying to identify and name, I hadn't seen yet. And then it also occurred to me that that's when I know a painting is done, is when I know I've seen it before in some way. And so these are informed by an experience that of times before that remind us of things and then times after. And all of the photographs I took that then I realized later what I was actually trying to capture in my paintings. So with that said, I would be happy to take any questions. I'm really grateful that you're all here tonight to join me in celebrating this work. And I guess thank you for being here.
Important thing you ever say to your students, because they don't know what's good enough. They don't know when they're done. They don't know how to say, I've finished and I'm fine and I'm proud of this.
Yeah.
And they already get that from you in so many ways, but to hear you say that you've experienced it and you know it's something that is true to the heart, what a gift it is. Thank you. And a gift to us, but I'm thinking about all of that.
It takes a long time. I think we live in a space where we expect there's I mean, that makes sense, right? But so often in life, that's not how it happens. We learn as we go, and I actually think working without trying to finish things is really important. And allowing things to build up before you try to name them. And I think that's definitely something that happens in my class. And I ask the students to try, and probably, I think it's hard to succeed at it, because it's a hard thing to do, and especially under time pressure. But it's a good thing to practice. Any other questions?
Can you talk about how you decided which painting to put where when you put up an exhibit?
Well, Leanna and Marissa, we actually there were more paintings up, and so I've got so many more paintings in my studio that couldn't be put in. It was just too much work. But we actually installed it while the student exhibition was going up to try to get a sense of the gallery before I was leaving. And I think we actually did a pretty good job of it, all things considered. But it helped to leave knowing that I had the work done for the show. And so it's funny. I don't know that I would have been able to do it without their input. And things moved around a lot. But then once they settled, it kind of felt right. And felt very satisfying to see that one. Any other questions?
Do you take photographs of the process? What is it your way?
I do. And it's a pleasure to be at an opening and actually have a camera on. And people are talking and to be like running around and documenting, because when you get up close, they really become lovely. But it's hard to be in a space where you're having an opening and it's documenting at the same time. So maybe you all be my documenters and enjoy getting up close and actually photographing them. And if you want to send them on to me, I'd love to see them. So it really is a fun thing to be. It's like
How long does it take for these to draw?
So it depends on the humidity in the space and the heat in the space. Sometimes it takes longer than I'm happy with, but it normally a few weeks at least, and it can be up to a month, depending on the amount of water. Slowly, as it dries and evaporates, it leaves crust lines, which is really interesting. So you can tell what time was day and night, because the crust lines are different widths, like the tree has rings. And so you can actually see the different drying rates by the different crust lines, which is kind of beautiful.
Did you invent this type of art?
So it actually came from a very funny story. I was in graduate school and was determined to make sculptural forms that could be looked through to see my paintings on the other side. To my advisor's frustration, he was like, "Just paint," and I was like, "No, I got this." And I struggled for months trying to work with these sculptural forms in resin, and I had figured out I wanted them to be spheres, but they were just not as interesting as the paintings I had been making. And finally, my advisor was like, "Hey, you think you're gonna throw in the towel?" And I was like, I was so frustrated. So I spent the whole day at the studio and finally got things that were starting to get interesting, and then all my casts broke. And I ended up cutting myself really badly. And I went out to the parking lot. It was the middle of Michigan winter. And but we had a warm day, and so the ice was actually starting to melt and kind of becoming lacy and lovely. And I sat down on the side of the parking lot and I cried. And I looked down at the ice, glistening in the sun, and I was like, why can't the resin just do what I wanted to? I just wanted to look like ice. And in that moment, I I realized that I was using the wrong material and that my interest in exposing process was not coming through my paintings as much as I wanted it to. And this could be a moment of giving a gift to the viewers of what it's like to be in an artist studio, but within a gallery environment. And so it happened just like that. I ran inside, I grabbed my mold, I filled it up with water, I emptied my graduate school freezer, and I literally had spheres going by the next day. And it became a challenge to know how to freeze them, but fortunately I was in Michigan at the time, and it was winter, so I was like a squirrel. I buried them, actually, in bags of snow, and put flags up to find them again, and ended up putting on a large series of spheres for my exhibition. So that's how it came to be. There are other people who use ice and have melting material, but I haven't ever seen anything quite like this. So, fortunately, I guess.
Hey, were you able to show Penumbra to the healer that you met?
Was I able to?
Were you able to show Penumbra to the healer woman that you met?
So she left shortly after. There was a huge storm that I picked up the seaweed from, and actually she left the island. She was like, I can't ride out the storm, and the storm has never bothered me too much. Funny, I always kind of enjoyed them, and so what's interesting is she was gone. And so, no, I didn't. And honestly, I don't think I fully processed what an experience I had until I left as well. I don't even know that I could fully explain what I was feeling until probably about a month later. And then it occurred to me that this thing was a much bigger thing than I realized.
Right.
Thank you so much.
Stay and ask individual questions and look at the art and eat some food and enjoy, and maybe we'll see you back on the 29th. Thank you all.